Hello, Brian Weeks here again with another MMCD contract consideration. This video clip will cover the topic of the critical importance of force account forms. In this short video, I'm just going to discuss when, why, and where force account forms are required and the severe penalty if they're not submitted. The standard general conditions in the MMCD make it mandatory for contractors to provide daily records of items for which they wish to be paid in all circumstances where work has been done but pricing has not been resolved in advance. Most significantly, failure to provide these records by the end of the next business day invalidates any entitlement for payment which would otherwise exist. In short, no forms, no pay. This seems to be an extreme penalty for an administrative failure. However, the GCs were written this way to ensure no surprise claims could arise later and ongoing claims could be challenged when the activities were fresh in the minds of both parties. Before going further, I want to clarify the term force account, as many people misunderstand it. It is not work that is to be done or is being done. Rather, it is an accounting method by which that work is to be costed for reimbursement. Normally, its use is restricted to items which, for whatever reason, were not included in the original contract. Occasionally, some items are intentionally listed to be done by force account when the scope, timing, or difficulty cannot be predicted. Other methods of costing items which are to be added to a contract are by a new lump sum or by a new or altered unit price. I'll discuss why these methods are preferable. The intent of using the force account method is to, quote, make whole a contractor when doing work for an owner where a pricing scheme has not been pre-agreed. For this reason, it's sometimes known as cost plus, and I'll use both terms in this video. To do this properly, there must be accurate records of the components which will create the reimbursable cost. We require the contractor to record on a shift-by-shift basis the hours of labor by category, the hours of equipment time by type, and the cost of materials used for the work in question. This reporting must include not only the work done by the contractor, but also any work done by subcontractors. It is implied that the CA, or more likely an inspector, will verify and sign off the quantities submitted on a daily basis also. If there is any disagreement about a quantity, attempts should be made to resolve it while the facts are fresh in everyone's mind. If resolution is not possible, both parties should record their version of the disputed facts for subsequent determination by the CA or others. It is not reasonable or even possible to cost these forms daily, so this is not required. In fact, if subsequently entitlement is not proven, or if another method of costing is agreed, these forms may never be costed. This minimizes wasted time. The MMCD made it mandatory for a contractor to comply with an order from the CA. The contractor does not have the discretion to refuse or delay, whether or not in agreement with the work or its pricing. As a result, we wanted to ensure that the contractor had every confidence payment would be made for work beyond that called for in the contract. While we hope the two parties will be able to negotiate the additional cost, we realize that a fallback position had to be provided in case negotiations failed. The other reality is that sometimes it's just not possible to set a price in advance of the work being done. Examples are in an emergency situation, when the scope, extent, or difficulty of the additional work is uncertain at the beginning, or when negotiations are incomplete or have failed by the time the additional work must start. However, force account pricing should be the method of last resort. It imposes a significant administrative burden on both the contractor and the CA. Both have to track quantities and time for every shift, for every item where there is the potential for additional payment, but where the method has not yet been agreed. Furthermore, and possibly most significant, there are so many points on which the two parties may have different opinions that disagreements are likely, and this leads to a breakdown of the cooperative attitude which we hope to promote at the field level. For example, how much overtime should apply to the force account work when it took less than the person's full shift? Or was every piece of equipment needed and in use, as opposed to some of it being on standby for part of the shift? Or how much overhead should be allocated? Or should the whole value of a material purchase be included? Or does it have some salvage value that should be recognized? And how much would that be? Finally, recognizing the negative aspects of this method, we strongly encourage the contractor and the CA to agree to a less burdensome method. Sometimes, when a new lump sum or unit price was not predictable before the work, it will seem quite simple to agree on what seems to be a reasonable number once the work has been done. Of course, having the proper records is essential to be able to judge what is reasonable. The general conditions require a contractor to submit force account forms daily whenever work is being done that the contractor expects to be paid beyond that which is already agreed in the contract. This includes changes, GC7, extra work, GC9, concealed conditions, GC11, hazardous materials, GC12, delays, whether directed or otherwise, GC13, and any work for which the contractor has asked to receive a change order but has not yet received it, GC17. Under normal circumstances, the contractor is precluded from starting any work for which they expect additional compensation without first having a change order. GC 10.2.1 says, the contractor shall not do any work to be paid by force account without the prior written direction of the contract administrator, except in any emergency. Nevertheless, there may be three other reasons for proceeding without the change order. One, the change order has been verbally approved, but the written copy has not yet finished the issuing process. Number two, the scope or pricing of the work is still being negotiated when the work must start. Number three, the CA has evaluated that no change order is warranted, i.e., that the work involved is already included in the terms of the contract. Here, the contractor disagrees with this opinion and is doing the work under protest. GC 7.3.3 makes it clear that when a contractor proceeds with work before or not having a change order, the mere submission of the daily forms does not constitute entitlement to be paid. In fact, even having those forms verified for accuracy by an inspector or the CA makes no difference. 7.3.3 reads, however, the mere maintenance and submission of such daily records shall not create an entitlement for the contractor to receive payment for the claimed change, and the contractor's right to receive payment shall be as otherwise provided in the contract documents. In legal terms, the provision of the daily forms is a, quote, necessary but not sufficient, unquote, condition. The result of this is that failure to provide the forms bars any claim at all, irrespective of other entitlement. It is an overriding obligation. If and only if the forms have been provided, will someone be required to consider entitlement under other contract provisions. If entitlement is later proven to exist, then the forms can be costed unless some other method is subsequently agreed upon. Otherwise, no calculations need be done on the form data, thus saving both parties much effort. GC 10.3.1 is very explicit. The contractor shall submit such force account reports to the contract administrator before the end of the next day. The word shall makes this a mandatory obligation for the contractor to provide the forms on a daily basis when doing such work. While not saying it directly, there is an implication that the CA is expected to certify the forms on the same frequency. Failure by the CA to certify the forms does not invalidate the submission. As long as the contractor can prove the forms were submitted, the requirement has been met. A delay in certification merely weakens the CA's credibility when challenging numbers submitted on the forms. GC 10.3.2 reads, "The owner shall not be liable to pay for any work based on force account for which the daily force account reports were not prepared and submitted as set out in GC 10.3.1. This is the language that imposes the severe sanction of voiding entitlement if the forms are not provided as required. The words "shall not" are a definitive statement contractually removing the obligation of an owner to pay for something that would normally be to its account. Here's a real-life example from the early history of the MMCD. The contractor did not provide daily forms for additional work, relying on past experience that these could be done later. Towards the end of the project, he submitted a claim package of 17 items, none of which had the daily forms filled out at the time or even later. The CA reviewed the package and rejected them all based on the GC 10.3.2 provision. The contractor was astounded that failure to do timely paperwork could invalidate a claim and had the issue put to a referee as part of the dispute resolution process. The referee reviewed the claims and determined that, but for the missing documentation, 13 of the 17 claims would have been valid. However, in view of the missing force account forms, he concluded that the CA had made a correct and impartial decision. He supported the decision that the owner was not obliged to pay. In the spirit of fairness, the owner agreed to negotiate a settlement with the contractor, but both sides knew the contractor was bargaining from a weak position. The relative strengths of the parties would have been reversed if only the contractor had complied with the contract requirements to file force account forms daily. So let me summarize. 1. Force account, or cost plus as it is sometimes known, is an accounting method for additional work. 2. The force account method should be the last resort because of the extra administrative burden and the potential for disagreements and hard feelings that it can generate. 3. MMCD makes daily submission of force account forms a mandatory prerequisite to evaluation of entitlement regarding payment for additional items. 4. Submitted forms do not need to be costed, but are expected to be verified for accuracy of quantities as soon as possible. 5. Unless a change order has been issued stating that this will be the costing method for an approved change, verification of submitted quantities does not prove entitlement. 6. Entitlement will be determined by the facts of the situation as compared to the requirements of the contract documents. 7. Failure to provide the forms on a daily basis will automatically void any entitlement which might otherwise exist. In short, no forms, no pay. I hope this has helped clarify this contract consideration. Please check our website for further assistance and to see what other topics are presented in this series. Thanks for watching.